Wow. Seriously, that is so sick. All I did was put a prompt into Composer and it whipped all that up for us. Let's add a feature to our app that takes a web page, pipes that copy from the web page over to GPT, and that creates a really nice summary for us in a bulleted list, and then returns that summary so we can start to create a list of TLDR entries, which is articles we wanted to read but didn't have time, so we're going to read them later. By the way, if you're new here, this is a series where I'm building an app called TLDR using AI assistance every step along the way. Part 1, I did a bunch of product discovery using AI assistance. Part 2, I set up development environments. Part 3, I set up user management. And now in Part 4, we're going to focus on article summarization, which is a core feature for this application. So if you haven't seen the previous sessions, go check those out for all that additional context. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this mega prompt that I wrote for o1-preview and pop that over into o1. And while it's thinking about that and chugging away on how to create a development plan for us, I'm going to high level walk through this prompt so you have an idea of what's going on. So first I start off with some general instructions for o1-preview. I tell it what I want it to do for me. Then I describe the current state of my application so it knows what has and has not been accomplished already. I describe the scope and goal of the dev plan that I want it to create for me. I offer some design guidelines, so describing the user experience as well as the user interface. And I offer system design and application architecture. By the way, I collaborated with GPT4o to create this entry. This is actually pretty detailed and it's a lot of context for o1-preview to work off of. Next, I provided guidelines for how to write the dev plan. Um, Here I'm just saying that I want a user story, design spec, and so on in each scope of work. Then I provided my current tech stack so it knows what tools I'm working with. Then I gave it the file tree, the abbreviated version of a file tree that lists important files in my application, as long as a brief explanation as a comment around what that file does and what it's used for. And the last thing I provided was my current database schema. So as you can see, this is a ton of context for o1-preview to work off of. It should have a general understanding of what my application already does, how it's set up, and what I want it to do next for me. Okay, o1-preview created a development plan with 9 scopes of work, starting with implement URL submission feature. Scope 2, set up content retrieval and storage mechanism. Scope 3, integrate OpenAI API for content summarization. Create generative summary button and workflow on front end. This is a little bit of a stepping stone to the UX that I ultimately want, but what I asked o1-preview to focus on is creating a generate summary button that, when clicked, triggers the summary generation from GPT. In the future, I'll have a cron job in the background that does it automatically. Scope 5, display summaries and daily themes on the front end. The daily themes idea, that is where GPT is going to take all the summaries of the day and add some additional discussion on how those summaries relate to each other or are different and what the theme is for the day. Implement daily thematic analysis feature. UI UX enhancements and mobile responsiveness. Implement authentication checks and security enhancements. And finally, Scope 9, testing and quality assurance. I think this looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and run with it, starting with Scope 1. So before I paste Scope 1 into Cursor so it can start writing code for me, let me take a quick look at the app so we can remember what it looks like right now. I have basic user management in place, so I can log in, I can create an account, and I can I can do password reset. And when I log in, this is what it looks like. It just shows me a welcome screen and I can log out. And that's basically it. So we're going to add functionality to this app. All right, grabbing Scope 1 prompt, and let me bring that over to Cursor. I'm popping the prompt into the Composer feature of Cursor so it can read the prompt, understand it, and start generating code changes for me. Okay, the changes look pretty good to me. I'm going to go ahead and accept this. Now I'm going to come over to the migration file that it just created, and I'm going to rename it. I'm just adding today's date and o1 so that it will be sorted properly. Okay, now let's go ahead and run this migration and see if that goes through. Okay, cool. I see the user submission table in the database now, so it looks like that worked. Okay, are there any changes to our app? Not yet, but I probably need to log in to see if there's any changes. Okay, logging in, I do see something new. I see an enter URL. Oh, look at that. It gives me some nice placeholder text. Enter URL, submit, log out. Awesome. And there's an error message. Very, very nice. Not seeing any errors come through on the browser. That's fine. Let me check to see if cursor is, or my terminal rather, is displaying any of those errors. Nope, nothing there as well. What happens when I actually enter a URL? Okay, here's an article explaining how to use cursor. So that can be our little test article. URL submitted successfully. Cool. And I don't see any errors in my terminal. If I'm looking at my database, let's select all from this new user's submission table. And yeah, looks like we got our submission right here. Wow. Seriously, that is so sick. All I did was put a prompt into Composer and it whipped all that up for us. Gosh, that's great. Let's move on. But not before we do a git commit. If you've been watching my videos, you know that we have to add a git commit after each scope. So let's do that first. Already committed, now on to scope number 2. Set up content retrieval and storage mechanism. Okay, looks like in this scope, what's going to happen is after I submit the URL, it's going to grab the contents and then store it in a new table called article content. Cool. Prompt going into Composer so it can do its thing and write some code for us. Okay, the types of changes it's making look pretty similar to the last scope of work. I did notice in the content service.js file, it's requiring a package called Cheerio. I may have installed that. I don't remember installing that, so we'll see if that actually already is installed. Composer did not tell me that I need to install it, so I'm going to skip that unless it yells at me. But I need to accept these changes and then edit the name of the migration file and then run the migration and then test it. Aha, and here it is. Cannot find module Cheerio. So let me go ahead and install Cheerio and get this thing running again. The server did crash. Okay, Cheerio installed. Looks like the server is running again. Let's see what things look like now. Check out the app. All right, logging in again, and I'm just going to take that same article and paste it in here. Submitting that article. Oh, I got an error. Okay. From submit URL. Let me pull this up for you guys. So, failed to retrieve content from provided URLs. Okay, it's failing while trying to fetch the content. Let me see if Cursor Chat can, or rather, Cursor Composer can help us solve this. Okay, it's saying you have to install Axios on the back end. I know I have it on the front end. I guess I don't have it on the back end. And now it's also adding some better error logging right here, which is great. Love that. So cool. Okay, server's running. Let me try this out again. Pasting in my URL, submitting, got another error. That's okay. Okay, after passing the same errors over to Composer again, it's saying, okay, let's try Puppeteer because we need a more modern approach to grabbing content from modern websites. So let me go ahead and install Puppeteer, accept these, and try again. All right, submitting it one more time. It is attempting. Hasn't worked yet, so I'm expecting it to fail again. Let's see. Okay, interesting. So I've tried this datacamp.com URL a few times. It keeps failing, but I also just tried littlespoonfarm.com to try to grab a recipe, and that actually succeeded. So it looks like the error currently is isolated to datacamp.com. Hey, look at that. After a little bit more back and forth with Composer, it was able to get it to a spot where it's successfully grabbing the content of this datacamp.com website. I'm going to try it real quick with with Substack, just to see if it can pass that test too. Cool. Looks like it worked with Substack. I am happy with this for now. I was a little bit more back and forth than I would have liked. And this file, this content service.js file, was edited quite a bit. So I'll have to take a closer look at this here in a bit just to make sure I'm fully understanding how this is working now. But we do have a working content grabber. So let me go ahead and do a commit and move on. Scope 3, integrate OpenAI API for content summarization, popping that into Composer and letting it do its thing. Changes look okay. Let me accept these, change the name of the migration that was created, and then run the migration. We do need the front end to trigger the summarizations as it's explaining here, so not a lot to test quite yet, but it looks like the server did crash, so let me figure that out. Okay, I had to install the OpenAI package. Let's see if that resolved things. Yep, the server is back up and running, so let's do a git commit and move on for now. Scope 4, create generate summary button and workflow on front end. Let's get that into cursor. Okay, cool. There was only 2 files that needed to be changed for this one. I'm going to go ahead and accept and give it a quick test. All right, what do we have here? Hey, look at that. Generate summaries. Click the button below to generate summaries for all your unsummarized articles. Generate summaries. Let's give it a shot. I'll be super surprised if this works on the first try. Whoa. Okay, so successfully generated 3 summaries, 9 failed. Interesting. My guess is that the 3 that succeeded are the ones that I actually grabbed content for, and the 9 that failed don't have any content in the database. Look at that little typo on summaries. That's funny. Okay, the reason we're not actually seeing the summaries is because that's the next scope. Scope 5 is where we're displaying the summaries. So I'm actually going to check in the database instead to see if we can see the summaries in there. Okay, we have this new summaries table, selecting all from summaries. Let's check it out. Ooh, we have stuff. We have stuff. Okay, great. Obviously, this is a terrible display, so let's go ahead and move on to the next scope and see what it looks like in the UI. Little git commit. Scope 5, display summaries and daily themes on the front end. That's interesting because I don't think I'm actually creating the daily themes yet, but oh well, let's just move on. So this is interesting. I'm seeing the code changes that this prompt is resulting in Composer, and one thing that's happening is it's mixing up backend, quite a bit of backend and front end changes. And I think to keep things a little bit cleaner in the future, I'm going to guide o1-preview to keep heavy backend changes as their own scopes of work and heavy front end changes as their own scopes of work. So I don't personally really want new tables being created like they are here in this migration, along with creating new front-end components for displaying that data, all in the same prompt. I'd rather kind of split those up so that things are a little bit cleaner and I have a little bit more trust and reliability in the AI to write the code correctly. I'm also noticing that Composer is not telling me to run a migration, even though a migration was created right here, which I will need to change the name of, by the way. So I'm noticing that it's getting a little bit lazier with its instructions. There was a lot of code generated, and the code looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and accept it, change the name of the migration file, run the migration, and then test things out. Okay, did all that. Looks like the server is running. Let's take a look at the app and seeing a little error message here, failed to load summaries. I'm just going to give it a quick refresh, log back in and see if I get a different result. Okay, great. So same result here, failed to load summaries. Let me try generating the summaries again. Failed to generate 9 summaries. Okay, we have an issue. Let me dig into that. All right, I'm just copying this error here at the bottom of the console, pasting that into cursor. Okay, it's saying the backend was not returning themes, so I'm going to go ahead and accept those. Server's still running. Let's check it out. Okay, with another page refresh, things are displaying now. So the 3 articles we were able to grab content for are displaying as a list of summaries. As today's date, which is kind of what I wanted, it shows the URL, which actually links out. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't actually ask it to do that for me, but it makes sense. And it has a little timestamp here. That's a nice touch. Hover state. I gotta say, this is an awful formatting for the summary. That's okay. I didn't really give it much guidance there, but it is providing a summary that was generated by OpenAI, and you can link out to the articles. This is pretty cool. Good progress. All right, let's move on. Hit commit. Got those changes saved. Scope 6, implement daily thematic analysis feature. So the reason that we're not seeing the theme presented at the top of the date is because we haven't actually generated the thematic analysis. So we have to do that next. Okay, nice. Just 2 files changed. That's kind of what I like to see when possible. kind of minimize the amount of code that needs to be changed for each scope of work. Makes it a lot easier to grok what's actually happening. All right, changes looked fine. Let's test it out. Okay, I'm not seeing the theme anywhere. Do I have to regenerate these? Okay, I'm looking back at the scope that I passed over, and it is saying after generating summaries, the system should generate thematic analysis. So I think I have to go grab another URL and submit it and then regenerate summaries so that I can then get the thematic analysis. Let's try that out. All right, I'm pasting in this Lenny's newsletter from Substack. Okay, got that submitted. It actually was pretty slow, but now I'm going to generate summaries again. Okay, weird. I had to refresh to get Lenny's summary to show up. So that's working, but I'm still not seeing the thematic analysis. Let me dig into that a bit. It might be creating it, but just not displaying it. Okay, with quite a bit of back and forth with Cursor, we were able to figure out that the reason that the themes are not displaying in the front end is because the way that we're storing the dates in the database did not match the way we're displaying them and trying to group them in our code. So with all of that figured out, we now have, I think, 4 pages summarized, and then, oh no, 5 actually. And then at the bottom, this lovely daily theme analysis. This is way too long of an analysis, but that's okay. We haven't really iterated on the prompting yet at all for GPT. So I just want to see that things are actually working. The plumbing is hooked together, so to speak, and it looks like it is. So I'm excited. I'm going to do a git commit and move on. Scope 7, UI UX enhancements, and mobile responsiveness. Excited to see what it comes up with on this one. Okay, it's honestly not that different. Mostly it seemed to change this top section. Now it's fixed so it doesn't scroll up when you as you're scrolling. But you know, more or less is pretty similar to how we had it. That's fine. Let's move on. Scope 8, implement authentication checks and security enhancements. Sounds like a good idea. You know, I'm actually going to reject these changes, not because I think they're bad necessarily, but I think that the way that I would want to approach adding more security to this app is I would want that to be an entire development plan in itself. And I would want to collaborate with GPT4o to come up with the important things that I might want to add as additional security measures, and then just have kind of a security dev plan and go through that step by step. Because I feel like what I've been focusing on so far is adding additional functionality, and now I'm slapping on all these changes that don't necessarily relate to the work at hand, but they're adding security across the application. And conceptually, it's just not reconciling very well in my mind. So I am going to go ahead and reject these, and I'll do a security scope in the future. Same with scope 9, actually, testing and quality assurance, adding automated testing. I have not been adding automated tests. That's a gap on my end. It's cool that it's recommending this, and I should be adding automated tests, but I would like to approach that in its own development plan so I can wrap my head around what we're actually going to do. I just am not ready to add automated tests yet, and that's just my own fault. So I'm going to go ahead and skip this for now. Okay, I think we're at a stopping point. I'm just going to give a final demo of the product. I'm pretty stoked with where it came out. I think the design has a lot to be improved, but the functionality is getting there, and I do need to adjust my prompts as well. But to do a final demo, I'm going to grab a couple links to articles that I actually personally received today from my friend Matt. If you're watching, thanks for the articles, Matt. And I'm just going to try out the product using those links because this is kind of the purpose of the product. You get links from your friends, or you find links on your own and you don't want to read the article now, but you want to get a summary later. So I'm just going to add those URLs. Okay, cool. I've got my 2 URLs submitted. I would like to actually see the URLs submitted here, waiting to be summarized, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and generate the summaries, and I should wind up with 2 summaries and a thematic analysis. Sweet, here we are. We got summary 1, summary 2, and a little bit of thematic analysis. Great. Thanks for hanging out. If you want the full context, be sure to watch the previous videos or click the link in the description to see all my notes on this journey. I'm also asking people, there's a link in the description, if they would be interested in this process being taught in the form of a course. If there is interest, I'm happy to put that together for folks, but I probably won't do it unless people actually want it. So if that sounds cool, fill out the form in the description for me. And as always, give me a subscription. I'll catch you later. Peace.